Finance and personnel of the Board of School Directors will please come to order. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Director Herndon. Director Jackson.
Present.
Director Reza.
Present.
Director Zomber.
Present.
And Chair O'Halloran.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. The chair will now ask the secretary to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. The chair invites any members of the audience who wish to participate to do so and asks that those who do not wish to participate please remain silent during the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is being conducted from the Central Services Building. This meeting is also broadcast on the MPS YouTube stream, the links to which may be found on the MPS website on the broadcast page. Finally, for our listening audience, if you wish to access this evening's agenda items and attachments online, you may do so by visiting the Meetings, Agendas, and Minutes page of the MPS website. Before we begin tonight's meeting, we have a short announcement regarding the interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of our audience.
Buenas tardes y bienvenidos a la Junta Escolar de las Escuelas Públicas de Milwaukee. Si deseas escuchar esta reunión en español, por favor, llame al 312-626-6799. Otra vez, 312-626-6799. Introduzca el número de reunión 608-130-5362. Nuevamente, el número de reunión es 608-130-5362. Gracias.
Thank you. For each item of business, we will hold a discussion and public hearing. If you wish to speak, please fill out a speaker slip and bring it to our secretary, Dr. Owen Moore. We have no virtual speakers registered for tonight's meeting. For the sake of fairness tonight and to give everyone a chance to speak, the chair reserves the right to limit the length of time allowed to any one speaker. Disruptive or disrespectful behavior will not be permitted. If it occurs, the meeting may be paused and those involved may be asked to step out so we can continue in a safe and productive manner. Thank you for helping us ensure a positive experience for everyone. And now, given that our focus this year is literacy, we have some help with our messages from one of our young readers. Nyla is a 7th grader at Story School.
Welcome to tonight's committee meeting. The committee will accept public comments on tonight's agenda items. Speakers may only address the items for which they have registered. Questions from the public may not be answered during public comment period. Following public comment, the committee will begin its discussion, and no additional comments will be accepted. When you are called upon to speak, please state your name and spell your last name for the record. Like this: Tamika Jones, Jones. Written testimony will also be accepted for transmittal to the board. Send this testimony to the Office of Board Governance, P.O. Box 2181, Milwaukee, Wisconsin 53201, 2181. Or email it to governance@milwaukee.k12.wi.us. Just as a reminder, Robert Rules of Order dictates that all comments, questions, or requests should be directed to the chair, who will determine the most efficient way to address them. Also, no one other than members of the board, designated staff, and those who have been invited to present or participate in items of business will be allowed on stage before, during, or after meetings of the board and its committees.
Thank you, Nyla, for being tonight's reader, and a special thank you to Laura Vanderbilt, the library support paraprofessional at Story, for encouraging her students to read for our meetings. If you have a child that would like to read for the board meeting, send a message to governance@milwaukee.k12.wi.us. There are a number of items that come each month as routine matters that we will be listing under a consent agenda. We will have one public comment period on consent agenda matters. After the public comment period, if board members wish to ask questions or comment on specific items, they may set those items aside for separate consideration by the board. No additional public comments will be accepted. Any items that are not set aside will be approved with one motion. We will not have formal presentations on consent agenda items. Madam Secretary, do any members of the public wish to comment on consent agenda items?
We do not have any speaker slips.
Thank you. Are there any items on the consent agenda that board members wish to set aside? Okay. Seeing none, may I please have a motion to approve the balance of the consent agenda items? Director Zambor?
I move to accept the balance of the consent agenda items.
Okay. Will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Zomber's motion to approve the balance of the consent agenda items, Director Herndon,
Aye.
Director Jackson, Director Reza,
Aye.
Director Zomber,
Aye.
and Chair O'Halloran.
Aye.
That's 5 ayes, the motion passes.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, what is the first item set aside?
We have no
Sorry,
items.
my apologies.
That's okay.
Madam Secretary, what is the first item for presentation?
The next item of business, now we're back to the remainder of the agenda. The next item is action on receipt of the fiscal year end 2024 audit reports. The administration recommends that the board accept the following documents as attached to this item. 2024 ACFR financial statements, 2024 Milwaukee Board of School Directors Early Retirement Plan statements, 2024 Milwaukee Board of School Directors Early Retirement Plan for Teachers statements, reporting and insights from 2024 audit, June 30th, 2024, and report on 2024 federal and state awards.
Would the administration please present the item?
Chair O'Halloran and members of the committee, Brenda Caselli is superintendent. Joining me this evening is our Chief Financial Officer, Aicha Sava, accompanied by Michelle Walter, Senior Manager with Baker Tilly, and joining us virtually from Baker Tilly is Wendy Unger, Principal Partner. This evening, Baker Tilly will present the 2024 year-end audit report, followed by Ms. Sava, who will walk us through the district's action plan and share how we intend to thoughtfully address all of the audit findings. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair O'Halloran and fellow committee members. I'm Aicha Sava, the Chief Financial Officer. Tonight we will be presenting our 2024 financial statement audit results, and I am here tonight with Michelle Walters, and I will hand it over to her right now. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening, Chair O'Halloran, members of the committee. This is Wendy Unger from Baker Tilly, Principal. As Aicha mentioned, we are here tonight to present the results of the 2024 audit. Hopefully you are able to see the presentation that is up on the screens in the auditorium. I apologize, I cannot see you, so hopefully this is working on your end. If not, please feel free to stop me. Our agenda.
We can see it. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Our agenda for this evening is an overview of the 2024 audit. There's several reports that are issued as part of the audit process. We will go through the opinions that were received. We will also take a couple minutes just to highlight what the audit is, what it means, what the approach is. We will go through the federal and state compliance findings, which are another portion of the audit process. We do issue a required communications document, the reporting and insights document, and we will go through that in a bit of detail as that's where the findings are communicated. We'll go through any internal control and other recommendations that were developed as part of the audit process, and then we'll conclude the presentation with some very high-level financial information. At the end of the presentation, we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. We've also included our contact information at that point. So to get us started, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle to cover the next couple slides, and then I will resume after she has completed her portion.
Thanks. Good evening, Director O'Halloran, members of the committee. I'm Michelle Walter, Senior Manager at Baker Tilly. So overall, the audit objective is for us, your auditors, to be able to express an opinion on the various financial statements for the district. And so what does this mean? So we have to do enough analysis over the financial records, the financial statements themselves, to be able to determine and state that the financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with accounting standards, that the financial statements have all the appropriate disclosures included in them, as well as that accounting principles have been consistently applied. So how we go about doing this as part of the audit is we start during our planning phase. So during planning, we don't focus on the numbers of the financial statements or of the district. We focus on processes and controls to determine where do our risks lie. And from that, we determine our audit plan. So we look at the significant audit areas, the risky audit areas. And what we do then is develop testing to be able to do detailed transaction testing, to do analytical review where we compare it to budget or to a prior year. We do confirmations of various amounts within the general ledger. We do searches for things that are not recorded that should be. So we're looking at a lot of details, a lot of transactions, but we don't look at every transaction when we go through and do this. But we have to do enough to get comfortable that those numbers are materially accurate. And this typically means if there's errors, we do more testing to get more comfort over that. So based off of the risk of where things are, we do more testing or less testing. But for 2024, there are 3 financial statement documents that we were able to issue an unmodified opinion on. So this is the highest level of assurance you can get from your auditor. So those 3 reports are 2 pension ones, both pension plans, which were done by another Baker Tilly team, and then the opinion on the annual comprehensive financial report. So very good outcome and the opinion you want to receive on these reports. We also do an audit of your federal and state awards and compliance that goes along with those. So there's 2 reports that get issued with this federal and state awards. The first is a report on internal control that's related to government auditing standards. And the second is based on compliance with federal and state awards. So we do this compliance work based on the criteria and stipulations that are put out by the awarding agency of these state and federal grants. So that's the compliance supplement that comes out annually or DPI's audit manual. So overall, in the separately issued single audit document or the report on federal and state awards, there is a section on findings. And findings 2024-1 to 2024-8 are all part of the financial statement audit. So we're going to touch on those briefly in a second, but those are required to be reported in this package and report because they are considered material weaknesses or significant deficiencies as part of the financial audit. When we look at the specific programs that we audited as major programs for the federal and state awards, there were a couple findings in various programs. So Title I, as well as some of the ESSER funds and supporting effective instruction state grants, these all had a similar finding. So if you're one that wants to look at the reports and say what goes with what, finding 9 and 10 are related to time and effort certifications. And this is a process that is done semi-annually for the district, and it supports the time worked by an individual in a specific program. So you're kind of verifying, yes, I worked in this program, so I can claim it as a proper expenditure. So these findings related to timely review and submission of these certifications. There was also a maintenance of effort finding that related to Title I, and then once again, the supporting effective instruction state grants. And this was all based on a calculation that DPI does regarding maintenance of effort. The underlying records that support that calculation didn't tie to what was in the accounting records. So work was done with the adjusted numbers, and that maintenance of effort was still met at the end of the day. There was a reporting finding related to Medicaid. This was 2024-11, and this was related to some incorrect reporting of salaries and benefits in the Medicaid quarterly submissions. Overall, there was no state findings as part of our work, and happy to report that as part of this process, we also do a follow-up of any prior year findings to see are they still applicable or have they been addressed. There were 4 findings in 2023 that have been addressed in 2024.
All right. Well, thank you, Michelle. So shifting gears and talking through the reporting and insights document, as Michelle mentioned, some of the information that is included within the federal and state compliance report is also included in this document. So you might hear a little bit of repetitive information, but I think it's important that we highlight the various components of this document. So the reporting and insights document is a report that we issue as part of the audit process that really allows us to accomplish a couple different purposes. One is we are required under our standards to communicate any internal control related matters that are of a significant nature, and those would be anything that is referred to as a material weakness or significant deficiency. And in a moment, we'll walk through what those were that were included in the report. We also utilize this document as part of the audit process to communicate any other more insignificant internal control matters or anything that we might come up with as part of the audit process that might warrant communication to management and those charged with governance. We are required under our standards to have certain communication with those charged with governance, and we utilize this document to satisfy that requirement, and I'll highlight that section when we get to that in the presentation. Also included in this reporting and insights document is the management representation letter. This is a document that is on district letterhead and includes representations that are made to us as part of the audit process. It's very normal and customary to be included, and again, we'll highlight any changes when I get to that particular portion. So on the next page, this is where we highlight the required communications that we need to have with those charged with governance. One, our first step is to communicate what our responsibilities are under generally accepted auditing standards. Michelle noted most of this when she shared her comments regarding the opinions. So our responsibility is to express an opinion on the financial statements. We are required to conduct the audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. And then, as Michelle mentioned, we do a certain level of testing, verification, sampling, audit work to provide a reasonable rather than absolute assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatements. So that's an important point to remember. That again, we do not look at every transaction, and therefore reasonable versus absolute is the term that is used. And then we are also responsible for issuing an opinion on the compliance with the federal and state awards program. We are required to communicate if there's any changes in significant accounting policies, and this refers to changes in auditing standards. So we often talk about new governmental accounting standards or GASBs that are effective for the district in an upcoming year. During 2024, there were no new GASBs effective, and therefore there were no changes in accounting policies. This does not refer to your internal accounting policies. So just want to make that very clear. We are also looking at management's judgments and the various accounting estimates that are included within your audited statements. There are numerous, so it's very important to remember that there's other parties' information that become part of your statements, which we do review as part of the audit process to ensure agreement with the calculations and the assumptions that are made. The various items that are included, OPEB liability, pension liabilities, accrued compensated absences, which is related to vacation and sick pay type activity, your self-insurance claims. So again, numerous items, but we do review those and believe them all to be reasonable based on the information provided. We are required to communicate and include any significant audit adjustments that were noted as part of the audit process. Those are highlighted in a bit of detail within the issued document, but for reference at this point during the presentation, just want to highlight what those were. There were 3 large adjustments that were noted during the audit process. One relates to unavailable revenue and the proper recording of that activity. That was roughly a $18 million journal entry. There was additional accounts payable that were noted as part of the audit process. That was an additional $18 million of activity. And then lastly, there was accounts receivable related to categorical aid of $16.6 million that was recorded. And again, those transition us into our next section where we highlight the material weaknesses that are included within the within the reporting and insights document. So switching gears here, when we perform the audit work, we accumulate any control issues that are noted, as Michelle mentioned, during our planning phase. So we start looking at internal controls, and as part of that, we develop these comments and recommendations that come up beginning with planning all the way through the end of the audit process. Including in the reporting and insights document, there is significant detail on each of these, along with the year that they were originally communicated and management's response each year subsequent to that original communication. I will note that there are 10 material weaknesses that are noted here. 8 of those are carryovers from previous years. Some may be as recent as 2023, but some may even go back farther than that. So I'm going to quickly touch base on what each of these relates to, and then we'll summarize the residual comments from prior years as to their resolution. So material weakness on the first bullet point here refers to the financial statement close process. So this is looking at were there material transactions that were found as part of the audit process? And as I noted on the previous page, there were 3 of those. In addition to that, were materially accurate financial statements prepared, was a materially accurate schedule of federal and state awards prepared. All of these are included within that comment, and all of these are highlighted as part of that material weakness that was shared in the report. In addition to that material weakness, we communicated audit readiness, timely submission, and accurate financial data. This is also a carryover from the previous year and discusses the readiness of the district for the audit process, looking at timely submissions to DPI and the related reporting, the requirement or the need for accurate financial data, meaning that reconciliations are performed throughout the year on a periodic basis, that reconciliations are agreed to the trial balances, and again, that information is ultimately submitted to DPI in an accurate format. Also included, the third bullet point refers to journal entry deletion. This is also a carryover point from previous years, and this relates to the financial system's ability to have journal entries deleted. So this is, from an audit standpoint, a relatively high-risk situation where an individual could go in and instead of reversing a transaction, the actual transaction can be removed entirely from the general ledger as if it never occurred. I do know that this has already been addressed during FY25, but it was in existence as of FY24, so it was a continued comment. The fourth bullet point talks about year-end accounts payable analysis, and this is really looking at the proper recording, making sure from a procedure standpoint that there are procedures in place to ensure that accounts payable are recorded as expected and as needed from a generally accepted accounting standpoint. So this is really looking at ensuring that invoices that should be recorded in a fiscal year are, those that should not be are not included. And then really looking at a significant focus on contract type work. For example, construction contracts, there's often a significant delay in getting invoices from contractors, making sure that those are obtained and recorded as appropriate in the proper periods. This also goes along with the journal entry I mentioned on the previous slide that was of a material nature that was found as part of the audit process. So this is an area that it needs to include some additional policies and procedures to ensure that all appropriate payables are captured. Budget reporting, this is also a carryover from previous years, and this refers to the accuracy and reliability of the data, the budget data that is in Business Plus, making sure that the original adopted budget information is included, amended budget figures are included, and that district policy for budget changes and adherence and adaptability are followed as part of the budget process. So this is, again, a reporting matter that was carried over from the previous year. Deficit cash, this is also a carryover bullet point. Deficit cash held by the city. This continues to exist, I believe, as of the end of the fiscal year, June 30th of 24, was approximately $91 million. At the point of issuance of the reporting and insights document, it had increased to $205 million, and I believe it is a lower figure as of today. That is a figure that fluctuates based on bills that are paid and receipts that are received that are ran through the city of Milwaukee, who manages the operating cash of the district. We did have some discussions regarding this and the need to evaluate why this deficit exists and how to resolve it on a go-forward basis. Contract invoicing support, this is also a carryover and relates to the year-end accounts payable analysis, really making sure that when invoices are received from vendors, that they are appropriately matched to the corresponding contract for whether it is a certain rate of pay that is to be received or a timing of when the payments are to be made, making sure that the invoices and the contracts agree, and making sure that if there are changes to a contract, that documentation is maintained and included with the contract so that validation can continue as appropriate even when those changes are made. Timeliness of time and effort reporting. This is also a carryover point from the previous year, and as Michelle mentioned, this relates to the semi-annual certifications and making sure that those are reviewed and approved in a timely manner. In the past year for FY24, those were being done sometimes subsequent to final claims being submitted, which at that point the reporting could have been inaccurate. The Medicaid reporting and maintenance of effort points, these are two new points. These were, again, carry forwards from the single audit report. Medicaid reporting, again, making sure that proper reporting is done for individuals who provide services, making sure that their salaries and benefits are reported for reimbursement as appropriate during the year. And then maintenance of effort, Michelle also noted regarding the appropriateness of the documentation that supported what DPI calculated versus what was in the district's system, and there being a difference. The last couple bullet points on here are prior year comments. These have been carried over for several years and refer to the pension audits. So as part of the pension audits, the pension team will also share comments that need to be included within the report for management's consideration. So these are two carryovers from the previous year. One relates to the review of SOC reports, and this very simply is an internal control report or audit that is done of the third party's systems to ensure the reliability of those systems and ensure that there is a low level of risk associated with using that third party. And then the last item here notes financial reporting risk, which is really a comment regarding fraud discussions at a management level to make sure that management is aware of what type of fraud could occur and that they develop policies and procedures to mitigate those risks as appropriate. We also do issue a separate report on information technology findings. That report has been issued and management responses have been provided, and that is available at your request. On the next page, to finish up the required communication, I do want to note before I begin on this page that there were 6 prior year comments and recommendations that were addressed during FY24. 3 of those related to the single audit findings that Michelle mentioned, and then 3 of those related to other comments and recommendations that were carryover from previous years that were addressed during the past fiscal year. Again, so to continue on, some additional required communication. We are required to bring to those charged with governance attention any entries that are uncorrected, meaning that these are not of a material level of significance that would require management to make them. So these are shared with management, and they work with us to determine if they are going to record these or if they are not. There were 3 entries that were not recorded as part of the audit process, so these are not in the data within the financial systems. One related to the accounting for some prior year accounts payable, the duplication of some life insurance liability, and then some grant revenue that was inappropriately accounted for. Other information, we're not aware whether or not the financial statements that we have provided and the opinion we've issued, if those have been included in other financial information documents. We are not aware that they have been. We did not have any disagreements with management as part of the audit process. We were aware that management did consult with other accountants, so that was CLA as part of the bookkeeping accounting assistance that was provided by that firm. And then issues discussed prior to retention as part of the audit process, the planning phase, the final phase. We discussed a lot of accounting related issues, accounting principles, but that occurred during the normal course of our professional relationship, and there was nothing that we believe resulted in our selection or retention as your auditors. The last point that I have noted on here is that we are required to communicate in that document any difficulties encountered in the audit process, as noted here, and this is similar to previous years, the significant delays in getting information that is ready to be audited, and then again, just the appropriate audit evidence for the various items that we look at during the audit process, which could be in reference to a reconciliation for a various account or something of that similar nature. Now, at this point, I will turn it back over to Michelle to conclude the presentation with some very high-level financial information, and then we will open it up for questions.
Perfect. So overall, some very high-level financial information. So for 2024, the district's governmental funds increased fund balance by about $118 million. And so the general fund, the main operating fund of the district, had an increase of about $119 million. The construction fund had a decrease of about $6 million based on spending on projects. And then the food service fund, or school nutrition fund, had an increase of about $5.1 million. So at the end of the year, these funds had a total $185 million fund balance. 134 million of this was restricted or committed for those capital projects funds, with a bulk of this being in your Fund 46 or your long-term capital improvement trust fund. There's about $49.2 million in the general fund, and this is broken out into a couple different buckets. The main pieces are, there's about $16.7 million that is assigned for the 2025 budget. There is 15.3 million, that's restricted for various purposes, whether they're grant funds to be spent or self-insurance. And there's about $15 million that's unassigned, so free to use as the district needs to. The school nutrition fund had an ending fund balance of about $1.8 million. So all of these are in the positive fund balance for each fund. There was no new debt that was issued during 2024, and the district was able to pay down about $12.8 million on that debt. And then the last item relates to the long-term liabilities related to pension and then other post-employment benefits. So based on the current year activity and where things sit, the pension liabilities increased by about $33.4 million, while the OPEB liability decreased by about $112 million. So those are all non-current liabilities, but they could be potential down the road to have to pay some of those amounts. So as Wendy mentioned, our contact information is on this last slide. We'd be happy to entertain any questions you have now or once you hear from the administration.
From the rest of the committee, would you like to proceed with the administration's presentation, or does anybody have any questions? Pardon? Sure. You want to go to administration first? All right. Yes, we will now hear administration's presentation.
Good evening again. Aisha Sava, Chief Financial Officer. Tonight I will be presenting to you our management response and our plan of action to resolve these findings. I do want to say that our goal really is to rebuild and restore sound financial practices and a strong internal control environment. And we are committed to addressing our findings and repairing our public trust and getting back to solid financial reporting. So again, I want to reiterate that we are really taking these findings very seriously, and we acknowledge that there are findings that were here for over multiple years. And as we are finally out of arrears in financial reporting, and we're into the reporting for FY25, we are at the spot where we really are committed to remedying these findings. So on the next slides, we will be going through each of the findings with specific action steps. So the way that we are going to be kind of attacking each of these findings really is working with me, myself as the CFO, and writing out documentation to provide proof of resolution to our external auditor. We will be developing a timeline and a deliverable schedule for each finding. Those will be approved by me, and then we will be doing biweekly and weekly check-ins with each lead for each one of these findings until they're resolved. And then as we kind of go along in this process, starting this fall, we will have, there might be slight modifications along the way as, we get in and start doing and remedying the findings. And also, we will be discussing with our external auditor, CLA, and kind of consult on any modifications or suggestions they may have. So our first finding, and the order of the findings that we have on this presentation actually mirror the reporting and insights document. So the first finding is the financial statement closing process. So our main first step here is really filling our vacancies, which is currently in process, and we are starting to get more applicants in the door or candidates in the door. And our second step is establishing a monthly process to review errors in financial reporting and preparing a complete and accurate schedule of expenditures. And one of the main things really to get our financial statement closing process is to reconcile our accounts on a timely basis. And those were, some of the actions that we hadn't been doing very timely, which led us to where we are. And then the next finding is audit readiness, timely submission. Here, a couple of our issues that we have and which we're working on right now is really kind of providing staff with adequate professional development and training. These, we've started going and attending WASBO trainings. We went to some earlier in the year. And, we've been working with DPI on getting up and doing more woofer trainings and online trainings. And then our external auditors are giving us extra trainings as well. So these are kind of a couple different action steps that we will be taking. And then, as I think said in the previous slide, we will be reconciling more timely throughout the year so that once we get to the end of the year, it's less burdensome and we're kind of caught up, so then we can be more efficient as we close out the year. The next is the journal entry deletions. As Wendy mentioned earlier in her presentation, steps 1 and 2 here are actually already completed. We are kind of just in the process of formalizing and documenting the journal entry process. So you cannot delete journal entries anymore, so those have all been shut down in Business Plus. And then for the year-end accounts payable analysis, training staff on expense accrual requirements. So this is ongoing and has been implemented already. And then one step that we have actually already done that kind of falls in between some of these steps is that we have come up with a new process where we actually, on the invoice, we've put the fiscal year, we've annotated it already so that it gets properly recorded. And then we actually already do have a year-end financial checklist that includes all the accruals, but it does need to be enhanced a little bit, so that is a work in process. And then the last one is to develop a year-end reconciliation report that includes all the accounts payable, and those, this is something that we need to develop and work on. Our next finding was budget reporting. So the first action step here was to develop a budget transfer log that auto-assigns numbers and placing controls in the financial software. So these are currently ongoing within our system Business Plus with our vendor PowerSchool. And then our action steps are also to implement monthly projections that compare budget to actual. And this is something that, we had started bringing to the board, but we are committed to making this more timely and better and using that internally as well for ourselves. Next is deficit cash held at the city. So a lot of the steps recorded in or outlined in this slide are a lot of different steps that will actually kind of help our cash position. So timely reconciliation, timely drawdowns of all of our grants, and then properly recording cash and expenditures monthly, and then also getting timely reports from City Hall. So these are all steps that we will be taking, and those will help increase our cash position at City Hall. And then next is contract invoicing support. Here we have steps 1 and 2 are in process, again with PowerSchool, our vendor for Business Plus. And actually step 3, provide training and professional development to our procurement staff. This is in process. And it's something that is ongoing. And then developing procurement manuals that align with industry practices. Our procurement director, they actually review and update our manuals every year. And so we will be making sure that they align with industry practices. So time and effort reporting you can see all the steps up here. We are doing better training. We will be doing better training for grant compliance and grant accounting staff. So that is kind of a cross-functional between 2 of our departments in finance. And then also with the time and effort reporting, it's better training throughout the entire district for our schools and our administrators. And then we want to create a system where we will be approving our time and effort reporting on a monthly basis, and then also elevating that up so that we can have them more timely and not, doing it a couple times a year so that it's on an ongoing basis. Medicaid reporting. So here, as Wendy had mentioned, we are, again, we have to kind of have some better training here, which we are already kind of in process of doing, and then implementing a system for validating licensure by a qualified individual. And then also, as mentioned before, we have to make sure that we are reporting and putting in our salaries and benefits so that we can claim those appropriately so that we don't lose out on any money. And assessing our, and again, requiring that we have the Medicaid training so that all of our staff within finance and across the district can report on this better. So lastly, maintenance of effort. So the first step in here really is to expedite the completion of our financial accounting manual. This is something that was part of our CAP 2.0 requirement, but we are also using the external assistance of MGT that they've actually already started, and they are currently doing the financial manual. And again, training and retraining staff on practices. And we have already met with DPI several times to go over maintenance of effort and really kind of learn our best practices, and so that we can have, on the accounting side and also on the budget side in the Office of Finance, really understand the maintenance of effort. And then the third step, which I think Wendy or Michelle said in their presentation, was that really we need to reconcile our accounting records to all the reporting so that it is all in line. Even though we were within our maintenance of effort, we need to make sure that we have it all reconciled so that it is good to go. So looking ahead, our main ways to really be able to accomplish all of these findings, or remedy all of the findings, is to stay on top of our goals and then utilizing all the assistance and available resources we have. And some of the resources that we are utilizing, like I mentioned before, we have external assistance, MGT, who actually has been helping us with a lot of process documentation. As we are getting caught up and doing all of our financial reporting, there's a lot of extra bandwidth that we don't have. But also, now that we're doing all of that, is creating these work groups and cross-functional groups so that we can remedy these findings. Some of the findings that Wendy and Michelle really went over with the single audit findings, they don't just encompass the Office of Finance, right? It encompasses a lot of other central offices, chiefs, down to the schools. So it is really kind of a cross-functional, all-district approach. And then lastly, kind of looking ahead with our DPI compliance efforts, we really are working towards, developing a WFR-compliant chart of accounts. And then, as I mentioned, the accounting procedures manual, and then enhancing our use of Business Plus. A lot of the findings that I went through with like the journal entry deletions, the budget reporting, there are so many of those findings that, like the contract invoicing, they're directly related to fixes within our system. And those, we actually have like biweekly meetings with Power School. So those are all on their radar. And then, like I said, a couple of them have already been completed, and we are kind of actively working through all of those. So, and then two other DPI compliance efforts are improving our position control process. This will make our lives easier internally. And then also rectifying issues with our benefits processing system. And at that point, this concludes my presentation, and I would be happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you. So it doesn't look like we have any speaker slips and we have no virtual speakers. So I will just move to committee members. Do committee members wish to make questions or make comments or ask questions? Director Herndon.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. One of my questions that I had made a note of when I reviewed it was requesting an explanation of the deficit cash held by the city of Milwaukee. That was something new to me that I had not actually heard before, and I wanted to know the process with that money. Was it our money that they were holding for a rainy day? You know, how did it come about that they would be handling cash for us in that manner?
Administration?
Well, Director Herndon, Chair O'Halloran, the cash, MPS cash is actually pooled at City Hall. Okay. So our cash is actually pooled together with the City of Milwaukee's cash together. So that's, and this was also, this was the repeat finding that we had from 2023. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Before we move on from that question, I think it would probably, like that doesn't actually, I understand that it's pooled at the city, but how do we get in a position where even if it's not segregated funds from other city funds, I think the public is owed an explanation for like how we would end up in a deficit situation. So if you can just go a little further in depth on that, I would appreciate it. I'm sure other people would as well. Thank you.
Sure. So to end up in a deficit, balance, you would have to have spent more than you received. And this, I mean, how we ended up here, it predates me, but from how I understand it, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that we spent more than we received. It can be a timing issue. So when we look at, and the auditors could even speak more eloquently than I could on this. When we look at balance sheet items, so like, you know, your cash, your liabilities, when you look at something, it's at a certain point in time. So our cash, like on 6/30/25 or 6/30/24 was exactly this. I mean, you can think about it in terms of your own bank account, right? So if you spend more than your paycheck or what you have in your bank account, and then by the time your next paycheck comes, you know, it kind of covers that extra spending you might have done, then you're not in a deficit at, you know, whatever date that is, maybe 2 weeks later. So that is a very simple explanation of how you could end up in a deficit. I mean, the long-term explanation could also be if you're consistently spending more than what is coming in. Hopefully that helps.
Okay. Any follow-up, Director Herndon?
Thank you. Along those lines, in the past, we were told, usually it would be around October or something, where we would have to go to the city and get money to finish out the year until we got our funds from DPI. So the only part that was missing, I guess, was the term that was used, which you're using now, which is deficit, which implies exactly what you're saying, that we overspent. But in the past, what I heard during these times when we spoke finances was the fact that it wasn't so much that we were really in a deficit as much as it were that we needed funds to make it till we got our next payday, for lack of a better term. Would that be an accurate analysis of it too, for one that's not a CPA?
Administration.
Yeah, I think at certain points that was accurate. And so I believe that is how it may have started. I don't know if the auditors have anything extra to say from back in the 22-23 audits that you might have looked at.
And Before sorry, I'm not trying to cut off the auditors, but I do see that perhaps Dr. Cassellius might have comments as well.
So Director O'Halloran and members, I just think transparently, we are getting to the bottom of this deficit with the city. I think that the auditors can speak to it as well. But I think a few years ago that there were some changes within the expenditure side and the capture of the revenue side and the claim side, as well as what we were spending, particularly on ESSER. And I think that there's still some discrepancies there that the team is still trying to get to the bottom of, where I believe we may need some additional support with the city, because when I asked the city about this, their response was different in what they believe is the number compared to what we think the number is. And so we need to get to the bottom of what the true number is of the deficit within the volatile nature of going up and down any one moment. You shouldn't be having fluctuations this big in both ways. And so I think there's still work to be done with our relationship with the city, with understanding our claims, our grant department, and whether we're pulling down all of those claims in a timely manner from DPI, as well as from the city in our revenue side, and then what we're doing on our expenditure side as well. And so I'm going to ask Wendy if she might be able to also speak to it, because I also asked Wendy about this morning as well, and have been trying to get to the bottom of this for a little while now with the city.
Sure. Chair O'Halloran, members of the committee, Wendy Younger from Baker Tilly. A couple of items to just note regarding the deficit cash held by the city. As noted previously, that balance fluctuates on a daily basis, multiple times based on the activity that is recorded. And oftentimes the activity at the city may be different than the activity that's recorded in the district's book. So that's one thing to keep in mind. There was reference to a timing issue that will always exist because you will never be in sync on when something is recorded on both sides. But with that being said, there was reference to borrowings that were done in the past in late fall to really borrow monies on a short-term basis until the district got tax revenue. That borrowing has not happened in the last several years. And I'm sorry, I don't know the exact number of years, but I will say for at least the last 2 or 3 years, there was not a short-term borrowing done. So that potentially could be part of the problem, because if the tax revenue isn't coming in until later in the year, once the city collects it, that could cause a situation. Another potential area of consideration, which is what was mentioned a few minutes ago, is regarding the timing of when monies are spent by the district and when those monies are ultimately claimed through DPI via a federal program. So typically the district would spend money, then you ask for reimbursement via a claim submission to DPI. That is very typical, normal for all districts. However, if that filing of that claim for reimbursement is not done so in a timely manner, there is a period of time in which the district is using other resources that are needed for other purposes to cover those grant type expenditures. This is something that happened back, I believe, in late 22, early 23 regarding the ESSER funding. And that's where I believe this deficit originally was created. Again, expenses were made, claims were significantly late in being filed, and therefore other district resources were used. Now, in the meantime, those funds have been received. So you've essentially replenished those, but you have numerous large federal grants that if those claims aren't being done timely, you're using other resources which could ultimately create that deficit position. So in agreement that an evaluation needs to be done as to what is the root cause of that deficit. Is it a timing of tax revenue? Is it a late submission of claims? And perhaps it's a combination of those and other issues. But at this point, to hone in on the exact reason that has not been done.
Thank you so much for that explanation. I think that makes, well, at least from my perspective, I think it brings a lot of clarity to the situation. And then I'm going to just ask Dr. Caselius to also chime in,
Yeah,
please.
I have one really simple example that I think everybody can understand. As we all know, the government is in shutdown right now. We were told by DPI that our food nutrition funding will cease potentially at the end of the month. And so we're not going to not feed kids. We're going to have to feed children. So that money's going to have to come from somewhere. We have been told and assured that they will pay us back, but we will have to then get that payment at a later date, but we will have to cover it. So I think that, that's one very simple example of a large federal grant that comes into the district to help us with feeding our children.
Thank you. I think that also puts to rest some maybe conceptions. When we hear the word deficit, people, it raises alarm bells. So I think understanding that it's a fluid situation, that it can be related to a timely submission of data, and that there's further evaluation and work in collaboration with the city is reassuring. And, we can get to the root cause. And also, on slide 10 of administration's presentation, we're talking about the timely reconciliation of all cash accounts. Like, we know the steps that we need to take. We just need to take them. So thank you.
And once we get the evaluation done, we'll report back to you and report back to the public on what we find on that root cause and any other potential deficit that might still be existing because of any kind of errors in the past. We'll make sure that we are very transparent about that with the public.
I appreciate that. Director Herndon, I think we had did we answer all deficit-related questions?
Thanks very much, you did. And yes, what I referenced was some years back, between 2019 and say 2023, somewhere's in there.
Yes. All right. I guess I can just kind of go down the line. Director Zambor is pointing over to Director Reza.
One question that I have is, how accurate was our budget to the actual results? Is this an area that needs improvement?
I don't know if that one should go to administration, or perhaps our auditors could answer.
Carol Halloran, members of the committee, Wendy Younger from Baker Tilly. I'm happy to start addressing that question, and then management can feel free to add any additional comments. In regards to the accuracy of the budget, from the standpoint of looking at it from an audit process and being able to verify the budget data that is in Business Plus in comparison to the actual budget adopted versus the actual results was very difficult. And hence the reason that we've included the comment in the reporting and insights document, and also have removed the budget to actual presentation for your general fund in your audited statements, because we were not able to get comfortable that there was a direct correlation, or that the information we were comparing to was really an apples to apples comparison. So when you ask the question, is the budget accurate from the standpoint of does it compare to what you actually had occur, we are not able to respond to that, as there was no comparison that was able to be made due to the lack of verifying the data that's in the accounting system.
Administration, is there anything else you would like to add to that?
Chair O'Halloran and members of the committee, Aisha Sava, I would also just like to add to that with the finding with the budget reporting, some of the things that we were able to lock down will help us so that budgets cannot be changed after they are passed, but also I see that our director is here as well, but a couple of the things that we are doing to improve that and to be able to do the better budget to actual reporting is the budget that we passed in June, and then the fall budget, which the adjustment will be coming to you next week. With the new budget presentation that Mr. Sinram has done, we have line-by-line budgeting. So it is actually, it's more conducive now to doing the budget to actual. And then in June for FY25 reporting, we also brought forward kind of that budget schedule for you as the school board to reapprove so that we can put that in the ACFR. So we have taken some measures so that we won't be in that position again.
Director Asa, do you have any other follow-up, or does that answer? Okay. Director Jackson?
Yeah, first off, thank you, Baker and Tilly, Aicha, Matt Chase, and OAE. Thank you all for this, because we've been needing this for quite some time. I will ask just simply, just moving forward, are we in a better position now that we're not having this looming deficit over our head moving forward?
Administration?
Director O'Halloran, Director Jackson, I don't think so. I think we have better controls in place. We're going to have better standard operating protocols. We're going to have a fully staffed finance department, and our audit will be better and cleaner. We will address this issue, but that still doesn't change the bottom line. With not any new resources coming in from the State House, the pot doesn't get any bigger. So I don't think that it improves our financial picture in terms of the bottom line. I think we're still going to be having to face significant cuts in the future, in the next several years. I think we're still going to have to merge and close schools. These are really hard, courageous decisions that the board is going to have to act upon, that I'm going to be bringing recommendations for so that we can be in a sound fiscal position, raise our AAA rating, hopefully, and, be in a better standing with our public in terms of establishing their trust. Part of that is putting in the controls, and part of that is fixing these findings, but another part is really just simply being better stewards of the public's trust and the way that we spend money and being very transparent about it.
Director Jackson, is that
Clear.
okay? Thank you. Director Zombor?
Thank you, Chair O'Halloran. I do have a question for the representatives from Baker Tilly. We understand that an audit isn't a financial audit isn't an investigation, but can you comment if you uncovered any fraud or misuse of funds?
Chair O'Halloran, members of the committee, Wendy Younger from Baker Tilly. If there was any misappropriation or misuse of funds that were noted as part of the audit process, those type of items would have been communicated well in advance of this discussion and presentation. And no, we did not have any that were noted.
Thank you. And that, again, I think, puts to rest, or should put to rest, some misconceptions that might still be lingering. Director Zombor, do you have any other follow-up? Does anybody else have, before I just ask one or two questions? First, I'll go to Mr. Matt Chasen of Office of Accountability and Efficiency.
Thank you, Chair O'Halloran. I wanted to thank Wendy Younger and Michelle Walter. They have been outstanding audit partners for nearly decades. I say that almost plural. It might actually be the fact. I can't remember when they actually started. They have helped weather us through some very challenging financial storms. They have offered assistance without impairing any independence. It's been very deeply appreciated. So I want to make sure that they heard that tonight. Additionally, with respect to one of the single audit findings from FY23, it spoke to a material weakness in the preparation of our schedule of federal and state awards. Sort of to tee up the next item, I wanted to make sure I had clarity on the point. That material weakness for the preparation of our schedule of expenditures for federal and state awards, that actually is now incorporated in another material weakness finding this year. Could you just speak very briefly to that?
Baker Tilly.
Carol O'Halloran, members of the committee, Wendy Younger from Baker Tilly. Yes, that has been, instead of showing that separately, we have combined that with the first bullet point regarding the financial statement close process. So it is the same description and content per se. It is just instead of showing two separate points, we've combined them into one, which is more appropriate under the standards.
Thank you. Mr. Chasen, do you have follow-up?
Follow-up then too. I want to thank the administration. They had offered on slide 15 the commitment to getting the FY26 budget WOFR compliant as the kickoff of any fiscal cycle, with the ultimate culmination being the financial reports that you see in front of you tonight, where the budget can be made correct. It reduces the opportunity for any redo, any rework further downstream. So I appreciate the administration's commitment to making sure we get in a good place to start. That was all that I had. Thank you.
Thank you. I did have one question and then just a comment. To Baker Tilly, to our auditors, then, to reiterate on the last slide, I think it was the last slide, we had a discussion, we heard about some of the financial highlights. So overall, is the financial position of MPS, the general fund balance, is it improved? Is it about the same? Did we weaken? Just for our benefit, and maybe anybody who's listening, can you comment or summarize again the overall financial position of MPS?
Carol O'Halloran, members of the committee, Wendy Younger from Baker Tilly. I'm going to ask that Michelle respond to that question with the financial data that she has in front of her. Michelle?
Yes, thank you. Chair O'Halloran, members of the committee, I would say that when you look at your fund balance in total, yes, the position of the district has gotten better in the past year. And if you look at fund balance, I mentioned before that it went up about $118 million. Now, if we think back to 2023, there were significant delays in grant reporting, grant claims. So there was some large portions of revenues that you were not able to run through as revenues. So those got caught up in fiscal year 24. There's still a portion of those that are what we call unavailable, so they're not coming through as revenue and hit fund balance just yet. But the fact that, things are getting more timely, more caught up, your fund balance is in a better spot. And I would say you're in a solid fund balance state in all funds.
Thank you for that. And I think that is very helpful. I recognize an ideal state would be everything were perfect, but I will take progress, until I can have perfection.
Director O'Halloran?
Yes, Dr.
I
Cassellius.
still want to qualify it that we are looking at the school year of 23-24. So when you say FY24, that is July 23 through June 30 of 24. So we are now past 24, school year 24-25, and we're auditing our 25 books. And so I just want to, I'm cautious with what we say, so I don't want to do the happy dance that we're in this really good position because, we're 1 year behind, and in this look at, and so I just want to make sure, we're being very transparent with the public, because I don't want the numbers to be in 25 the complete opposite way, and, so I really want to just want us to be cautious and feel good about where we are, and we're making progress. A lot of progress still yet to make, and so we're digging out of of that, and we will hopefully be in a better position.
Thank you. Just a comment about the administration's presentation. I sincerely appreciate concrete steps, these action steps that we need to take, and it helps people understand, that there's a plan in place. It would be nice moving forward, and I'm not making a motion on this or anything, but to hear about the actual progress on this. So if there's one like the journal, deletions, like that's basically a resolved issue is kind of what I'm hearing. Put 100% by that. If it's like, oh, we're filling vacancies, I would love to hear, we have 4 vacancies that directly affect this particular issue. We've filled 3, we have 1 left. Like even if it's a progress of 75%, 25%, like just hearing kind of some more specificity around the timeline would be really helpful.
Director O'Halloran, members, Brenda Caselli, Superintendent, I commit to reporting transparently on our progress to AFP each AFP meeting. We can give that update on where we're at with this audit. We are also going to be working with President Zombor on a quarterly report on all audits that we're going to have, the academic audit, the operational audit, the HR audit, the fiscal audit, and we'll make sure that that's all inclusive in those quarterly reports so that the public can see it transparently. You all can see the progress that we're making. I'm very proud of the progress that we're making, but there's still a lot more to do.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? What is the pleasure of the committee with respect to this item? Director Zombor.
I move to acknowledge receipt and accept the FY24 audit reports as attached in the item.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, the secretary will please call the roll.
On Director Zomber's motion to acknowledge receipt and to accept the audit reports, 2024 audit reports as attached to this item, Director Herndon,
Aye.
Director Jackson,
Aye.
Director Reza,
Aye.
Director Zomber,
Aye.
and Chair O'Halloran.
Aye.
That's 5 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Item 2 is possible action on the activities of the Audit Advisory Committee. The recommendations of the Audit Advisory Committee are listed in the attachment to this item. The recommendation of the Office of Accountability and Efficiency is that the board determine how it wishes to proceed.
Thank you. Would the Office of Accountability and Efficiency please present the item?
Thank you, Chair O'Halloran. Matt Chasen, OAE. The item before you tonight is the first one that we're seeing from the newly created Audit Advisory Committee. They've had several meetings since the charter was approved by the board in the spring. The most recent committee meeting was on September the 18th. It was in that meeting that the body examined and discussed the audit findings that you saw in front of you this evening. The charge of the committee is to examine audits and to provide recommendations out to the committee on accountability, finance, and personnel. And so that is what they have done this evening. Okay, thank you. The item is up. Probably a little bit harder to see on the big screen. Maybe the color coding that I'm about to describe will inform for anyone who's in the audience. Otherwise, I encourage you to sort of check on the computer in front of you. What you see in front of you is just a prioritization ranking of the findings that we heard discussed just moments ago. What's highlighted in yellow are the 10 material weakness findings, 10 of which existed in the Insights and Reporting report we just heard from Baker Tilly. 2 of them were new this year. You can see those have kind of floated to the top with respect to prioritization. Maybe I'll take this interval then to also highlight the discussion that took place in the Audit Advisory Committee. Chair Zombor, please keep me honest if I misspeak here, was that there was some hesitancy to engage in prioritization because they stressed that each of them are important. Each of them do deserve corrective action. However, given a limited resource environment and urgency, a triage approach that sort of takes them one at a time, moves them to completion is certainly advisable. So moving on to the next color-coded interval, these are single audit items related to FY23, 3 of which have already been addressed. The one that you heard me just question Baker Tilly on was a material weakness related to the schedule of federal and state awards. That one has now been moved into a material weakness in what is the prioritization number 2, the financial statement close process. So that's where that item now resides. The 3 that are in light blue are other comments and other recommendations by Baker Tilly. They are not material weaknesses. As Baker Tilly had mentioned, these are recommendations. Some of them did carry forward from previous years. 2 of them are related to pension. Now, as this is the first time the Audit Advisory Committee has brought forth recommendations, we have deferred sort of to this body to examine and determine what the right path forward is, whether that is to have the administration consider them in terms of how they would like to approach, if there's simply a reporting out on the status of these to the committee. It's really open to the committee's discretion. I would like to reemphasize the intent of the audit function is to be a collaborative partner. It's to cooperate, to raise visibility, and then to offer process improvement opportunities. It's not intended to be punitive, and I think that is the general tone of the conversation that has taken place in the Audit Advisory Committee thus far. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have or to inform any possible motion.
Thank you so much. There are, just for the listening audience, we don't have any speaker slips on this item. There are no virtual speakers. So I'm going to move to committee members. Do committee members wish to make comments or ask questions? Okay, Director Zambor.
Thank you, Chair O'Halloran. I guess I am curious to see how other committee members or administration, what you think is most helpful. Like this is a new process for us. I will say I think that it might be helpful also for the audit committee to get eyes on, progress towards some of the findings so that we're not, that the audit committee isn't making recommendations on things that have already been closed or addressed. So I guess maybe it's a question for administration of what would be most helpful, or is everything on this list, all of these findings, does the administration already plan on including all of these findings in upcoming reports anyway? And then we can always just get the status update from administration's report. We can report back to the audit committee. It sounds like we'll be getting monthly reports at AFP and then a quarterly report on all audits.
Yeah, no, I will say, just before I turn it over to administration, I think that was my question. I spoke with administration yesterday, just, hey, we have recommended prioritization. Is this in alignment with your understanding? So I think it would be great to hear from administration how you receive this information and what you think would be best for moving forward.
Chair O'Halloran and fellow committee members, Aisha Sava, Chief Financial Officer. I did do a little reconciliation from the audit committees and to how we had them prioritized from the reporting and insights document. I will say that the first 5 are kind of like the first 5 on the reporting and insights and how we presented them tonight. But earlier today when we were speaking, and Dr. Caselius and I were speaking as well, what I think would make the most sense and kind of what you were recommending earlier is that we dump all of these findings in the spreadsheet and then we kind of track our progress and wrote this much % complete. And I think we can, and as a project management tool anyway, we were going to do that internally so then we can, kind of share that summary format out, to the audit committee and then up to finance committee. So I think that would be useful internally, externally for the board, for everybody.
Do you feel like that's acceptable? I think maybe the exact process TBD, I don't know that, so does it just get attached as an item or does it get emailed? I think some of those and I'm just thinking logistically, how we receive the information, but I think we can work on that behind the scenes. Okay, do other committee members wish to make comments or ask questions? No, okay. Before I ask for a motion from somebody, please, I just want to thank the audit committee and administration for working collaboratively to help our public understand where we're at, to help the board understand where we're at. I think more frequent discussions of these items kind of demystifies the process. It makes maybe concepts that in the past have seemed, for somebody with a CPA to understand, I think it makes accessible for more people. So the more frequently we discuss these, I think we're really making progress. So I want to thank everybody. And with that, I'm going to now ask my committee members, what is the pleasure of the committee with respect to this item? Do we need a motion? Do I have one? All right. Director Reza.
I move to approve the administration's recommendation for the activities for the Audit Advisory Committee. Is that correct?
Just a note.
I think we just need to accept the report.
Yeah. Accept the report.
Thank you, Director Reza. So, yeah. If there is no further discussion, will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Reza's motion to accept the report of the Audit Advisory Committee, Director Herndon? Aye. Director Jackson?
Aye.
Director Reza? Aye. Director Zomber?
Aye.
And Chair O'Halloran?
Aye.
That's 5 ayes, the motion passes.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Madam Chair, next item is item 3 is action on approval of a grant application with the Bicycle Federation of Wisconsin for bicycle and walking safety programs. The administration recommends the board approve the grant application from the Wisconsin Department of Transportation supporting the Safe Routes to School grant application.
Thank you. Would the administration please present the item?
Chair O'Halloran, members of the board, Brenda Casselli as superintendent. This evening, the administration is requesting authorization to submit a grant application for the Bicycle Federation of Wisconsin grant. This is a competitive grant that the district has successfully received in prior years, providing valuable support for our bicycle safety, safe routes to schools, and education initiatives. Through this funding, we've been able to enhance student engagement, promote wellness, and expand access to safe and sustainable transportation options. Our initial request outlined was for $607,300 with a district match of $121,460. Since submitting that preliminary figure, we identified an opportunity to broaden the scope of the project to include our high school program, further strengthening our district-wide commitment to active transportation, student safety, and equity. With this addition, we are now seeking approval to submit an application totaling $735,800 with a required match of $147,160. I'm joined by members of the team to assist with any questions you might have.
Thank you. We don't have any public comment and we have no virtual speakers, so I'm just going to move to committee members. Do any committee members wish to make comments or ask questions? Before we move on, I just want to clarify. So in the item that is attached, it says that if the application is approved, okay, so we're asking for permission to approve for what was the quantity?
It's $147,160, and it was already $121,460 that was approved, so it's approximately $26,000 more.
Okay.
That we would have out of our general fund to match.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood
Yep.
kind of the numbers. Okay. So, what is the pleasure of the committee with respect to this item? Question or motion? I'll take a motion.
Thank you, Chair O'Halloran. I move approval of the administration's recommendation regarding the grant application with the Bicycle Federation of Wisconsin.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, the secretary will please call the roll.
On Director Zomber's motion to approve the administration's recommendation for the approval of a grant application with the Bicycle Federation of Wisconsin, Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director Reza. Director Zomber.
Aye.
And Chair O'Halloran.
Aye.
That's 5 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Madam Chair, item 4 is action on a request to approve prevailing wages. The administration recommends that the board approve the attached prevailing wage rates effective as of July 1st, 2025.
Thank you. Would the administration please present the item?
Chair O'Halloran and members of the committee, Brenda Caselli is superintendent. This evening, I'm joined by Carol Eady, accompanied by Mr. Terza, as we request your approval of this evening's item on prevailing wages. This recommendation is necessary to remain competitive for our building trades workers. Upon board approval, the change will be effective as of July 1, 2025.
Thank you. So we, once again, do not have public comment on this, and we have no virtual speakers. So I'm going to move to committee members. Does anyone wish to make comments or ask questions? Okay. What is the pleasure of the committee with respect to this item? Director Zombor.
Thank you, Chair O'Halloran. I move approval of the administration's recommendation regarding the attached prevailing wage rates effective July 1st, 2025.
Thank you. If there is no further discussion, the secretary will please call the roll.
On Director Zomber's motion to approve the administration's recommendation regarding the attached approved prevailing wage rates, Director Herndon? Aye. Director Jackson?
Aye.
Director Reza? Aye. Director Zomber?
I actually do have a question on my motion now. I was reading it from...
process standpoint, are we allowed to make a comment or ask questions in the middle of a vote? Sorry, Director Zombor, I do want your question answered.
The chair has not called the final count, so you could. I don't know how that might affect members who have voted. If they may need to recall the roll if it changes people's minds.
Okay, so let's take a brief pause. Let's put a pin in the voting, and let's ask some questions.
Let me just quick ask the question. So the recommendation that was attached to the item, I read effective as of July 1st, 2025. Is it supposed to be July 1st, 2026? No,
No.
It'll go back. Okay.
Yes.
Then continue calling the
Just
roll.
from, yes, we do that. It did throw me the first time, but we do this every year around
make
this
sure
time.
we didn't have to
So,
redo it.
Thank you for the clarity. With that knowledge, does anybody wish to reconsider any votes, or should we complete the roll then?
Okay, then aye.
Aye.
Okay.
And Chair O'Halloran?
Aye.
That's 5 ayes. The motion passes.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Item 5 is action on a request to carry over fiscal year 2025 school deficit and surplus amounts. The administration recommends the FY25 school deficit and surplus amounts be carried over to FY26, as noted in the attachment, and that schools with deficits from FY25 pay back the amounts within 3 years.
Thank you. Would the administration please present the item?
Chair O'Halloran and members of the committee, Brenda Caselli is superintendent. In accordance with Administrative Policy 3.05, the attached document provides the list of schools with budget deficits and carryover funds. Schools with deficits greater than 4% in their discretionary budgets primarily attribute the overages to class coverage costs, contracted services, operational supplies, facility needs, and professional development expenses. The carryover list is also included with a cap for non-charter schools being $5,000. I'm joined by Nick Sinram this evening as we are prepared to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Once again, there's no public comment. Do committee members wish to make comments or ask questions? Director, not a director, Mr. Matt Chasen of the Office of Accountability and Efficiency.
Thank you, Chair O'Halloran. Matt Chasen, OAE. Just for clarity's sake, with respect to the budget amounts that are seen in the item under the working budget amount, some of the amounts seem low. My suspicion is that it is not the entire school's working budget, but it is specific to areas outside of salaries, wages, and benefits. Can you just offer some clarity on that?
Administration?
Good evening, Nick Sinram, Director of Financial Planning and Budget Services. Thank you for highlighting that. Mr. Chazen, you are absolutely correct. That would be the amount budgeted for discretionary spending, excluding salaries and benefits, commonly referred to internally as your Section 3 budget.
Thank you. Any other questions? Moving forward, it would be, I know there's at least one school on there towards the top that I've seen in the past, and it would be nice to know if this is a frequent condition for schools. So moving forward in the attachments, I think it would help provide clarity to perhaps professional development training needs. So yes, Dr. Cassellius.
Director O'Halloran, members, I think when we move to centralized budgeting, this will look very different in the future, and we'll make sure that we note what you have shared. I see Mr. Sinram already making notes, but it'll be part of our overall process improvements in how we are managing our budget, how we are accounting for the resources, and how we're providing for greater equity across our schools.
Thank you. And before we move on, I do have one other question. So I know for our quote-unquote traditional schools, there's a $5,000 cap. I do want to note that some of the instrumentality charters do have kind of a larger surplus that they're rolling over, and I was wondering if we ever get a report out on, plans for how that will be spent, because if the goal is to spend, kind of every dollar at our, that it is available for the education of the child, while they can roll over significant amounts and accrue maybe $141,000 as an example, I'm just wondering if there is like an intended purpose for that, and if we ever get a report back on what that surplus ends up being spent.
Absolutely. Nick Sinram, Budget Director. So typically, as you noted, those charter schools, they have greater flexibility within their negotiated contracts with the district as a part of their charter. And typically, those budgets are not typically always, those surpluses that are carried forward are planned in their subsequent year's budget. And so you do receive that spending through the budget process, but we can also add more detail if that would be something that you're interested in.
I would be curious. I don't know if anybody else would. Maybe I can just have a one-on-one conversation later. But,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay, with that, all my questions are answered. Director Zambor.
Thank you, Chair O'Halloran. Just a question on the deficits due to important maintenance. I just want to make sure that none of those deficits are due to any of the lead cleanup that we were going to centralize.
Administration?
Nick Sinram, Budget Director. Great question. No, those the lead stabilization efforts were budgeted and expended centrally. Those typically refer to maintenance involving safety issues to ensure all of our schools are safe and welcoming for our students, or to prevent future handle emergency repairs that would prevent deterioration if those concerns did not go addressed. But no, those are not charges incurred for lead stabilization efforts.
Thank you. Director Herndon?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My question is related to what goes on actually in terms of funding that they have control of, or funds that they collect for various reasons. Over the years, I've always reviewed the audits, the school audits, and most of them had some of the same issues with reporting their financials. Are there any plans by the administration to do more training with bookkeepers and perhaps administration within the schools? Because things like PCs, computers not being recorded, and they just disappear, or funds collected, say, for some sort of fundraiser, and it disappears, or it's not submitted or banked in an appropriate manner, or the bookkeepers not balancing the checkbook, which doesn't surprise me because many people these days don't know how to balance a checkbook, but they should at least be required to take a bookkeeping class so that they learn how to balance a checkbook or something. So my point is simply, is there going to be additional training in those areas such that there may be a possibility that we'd see this reduced at some point in the near future?
Administration?
Chair O'Halloran, Director Herndon, Aicha Sava, Chief Financial Officer. Our bookkeepers are actually part of the Office of Finance, and they are trained regularly. So, but in regards to the audits that you were mentioning, we do actually have a lot of efforts with regards to like the fixed assets and the property, and so we are working on those cross-functionally, and we've had several meetings to eliminate that finding. But in addition to that, we are working, and we have an overdue meeting with Audit Services and Mr. Chasen too, to kind of discuss all of those school-based audit, because there are a lot of finance findings in those, and I do want to get ahead of those as well. So we do actually have an overdue meeting on the books for that as well. But the bookkeepers are Office of Finance employees. They are under accounting, financial services, and they are trained regularly as well. And they have a very nice school accounting bookkeepers manual that they follow.
Thank you. Any follow-up? Okay. What is the pleasure of the committee with respect to this item? Director Jackson.
Yes. I move that we approve the request to carry over the fiscal year of 2025.
Thank you. If there is no further discussion, the secretary will please call the roll.
On Director Jackson's motion to approve the carryover of fiscal year 2025 school deficit and surplus amounts, Director Herndon,
Aye.
Director Jackson,
Aye.
Director Reza, Director Zomber,
Aye.
and Chair O'Halloran.
Aye.
That's 5 ayes, the motion passes.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Madam Chair, that was the last item on this meeting's agenda.
Thank you. As a reminder, a meeting of the Committee on Legislation, Rules, and Policies will begin shortly. There being no further business before us, this meeting is adjourned.